You lie in bed, eyes closed, and you try to imagine what it would be like to be dead. Absolutely nothing. No thoughts, no sensation, no self. But here's the catch, you're imagining it. And that means there's a you inside that image, floating in the void, observing. You haven't erased yourself, you've only placed yourself in a dark room. What you're about to learn suggests that the one thing you'll never truly picture is your own absence. Why can't you imagine your own death, even when you try? In 1974, philosopher Thomas Nagel at New York University published a landmark paper titled, "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" He argued that consciousness is essentially subjective. There is something it's like to be you, and that something can't be captured from an outside perspective. When you imagine death, you're still using your subjective consciousness to create the image. You're still there. Nagel's point is that any attempt to imagine the absence of consciousness inevitably smuggles consciousness back in. For you, that means every vision of your own death is actually a vision of a world you're still watching. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio from the University of Southern California expanded this idea in his 1999 book, The Feeling of What Happens. Damasio showed that the brain continuously generates a core self, a moment-by-moment sense of being alive and embodied. This process is automatic and involuntary. You don't decide to feel like you exist, your brain does it for you. So when you try to imagine the cessation of that process, your brain has to actively suppress its own core self. But suppression is not deletion. The self remains in the background like a hum you can't turn off. For you, this means that even the most vivid funeral scene you conjure still has you seated in the pews. In 2001, neuroscientist Marcus Rachel at Washington University in St. Louis identified the default mode network, a set of brain regions that are most active when you're not focused on any external task. This network is constantly building a narrative about you, your memories, your plans, your identity. It's the brain's default state. When you try to imagine your own non-existence, you're asking the default mode network to simulate a scenario where it doesn't exist. But that's like asking a person to draw a picture of a room they've never been in. A 2010 study by psychologist Jesse Baring at the University of Otago found that even adults who accepted death intellectually still automatically assumed some form of continuing consciousness in quick response tasks. Your brain's default mode network refuses to abandon the self. For you, that means every attempt to imagine death is a battle your brain always wins. But what if you could truly get rid of yourself? But not everyone agrees that the barrier is absolute. Some philosophers, like David Chalmers at the Australian National University, argue that while direct imagination fails, we can approach non-existence indirectly through conceptual reasoning. And developmental psychologist Jean Piaget found that children only gradually acquire object permanence, the understanding that objects exist even when unseen. Perhaps imagining your own death is a kind of self-permanence that the brain never fully learns. Yet even Piaget's observations show that once infants grasp object permanence, they apply it to the self. They know they continue to exist even when hidden. That makes the case of death unique. It's the one object you can't see from outside. Other researchers, like psychologist Peter Brugger at University Hospital Zurich, suggest that patients with certain brain lesions who lose the ability to imagine their own future also lose the ability to imagine death. This implies that imagining death relies on the same neural machinery as imagining any future self. And that machinery is still you, so where does that leave us? It seems clear that while you can understand death as a concept, you cannot experience it in imagination. The brain self-simulator is always running. Even the most sophisticated philosophical arguments don't give you a first-person sense of ceasing to be. What is actually known is that the neural circuitry that constructs your sense of self is the same circuitry you'd need to dismantle to imagine its absence. And that circuitry is never truly offline while you're conscious. What remains unresolved is whether any cognitive trick, meditation, deep hypnosis, or sophisticated reasoning could bypass this paradox. Early evidence from contemplative traditions suggests that long-term meditators report experiences of no self, but these are still experiences, not the black void of death. So next time you close your eyes and try to picture a world without you, notice something. The you you're trying to erase is the one doing the erasing. That image you see, it's not death, it's a dream of absence and you're the dreamer. The actual experience of not existing remains locked behind a door that consciousness itself pulls shut. And maybe that's the one door your mind can never open.